Have you ever noticed how loud the world can seem sometimes? Seems like every time you turn around, there's another news alert, there's something else that's warning us, there's some reason that we're supposed to be afraid. And that can just wear you out. I've lived long enough to watch the world make a few cycles around and come to realize that not everything that we're supposed to be afraid of, not every time there's a news alert, we ought to get all upset and worried about it. When I do hear something that gets me a little upset, I've learned some things that help me stay steady on a consistent basis. And honestly, I didn't learn it from a book or from a conference. I learned it from my great-grandparents. I was blessed to spend time with two of my great-grandmothers. They were born in the late 1800s. And they lived through hardships that none of us could even imagine today. They used every piece of ingenuity that they could in order to be able to solve problems. They focused on things that were real. They worried about things that were right in front of them and directly in front of them to be able to help take care of their families and to make sure that they survived through the next time. Sitting with those ladies taught me something about fear and perspective that really helped shape me for the world that I see today. One of my great-grandmothers, Jessie Joab, lived on a farm, and she raised food, she processed food, she pickled, she canned, she did everything that she possibly could to help her family survive during really difficult times, because that generation didn't have a lot, but they used everything that they had in order to make it through to the next day. And I'll tell you something, you really don't understand resilience until you go to your great-grandmother's refrigerator, pull out a Tupperware bowl, pop the lid off, and see a fully cooked cow brain waiting for you for breakfast. Jessie Joab knew how to use every piece of everything that was given to her in order to help her family survive. That generation learned how to adapt, to keep moving forward, and to put a focus on the things that were really most important. Most of them never spent a lot of time worrying about the latest news or what was going on in the world because it didn't affect them. What really made a difference to the men and women of that period was what was right in front of them, the people who were around them, what was happening with their family, and the things that they could have an impact on. They didn't pretend like life wasn't hard, and they didn't pretend like all of the things that were going on around them wasn't stressing them out. But they put a focus on doing the things that were going to make an impact on the people who were living around them. And their lives quietly impacted the way I have thought about my life. What I learned from them is bad times are not the end times. Every generation has had those moments where they really thought the end of the world was coming. For us, it was Y2K. Man, I wish I'd thought about hoarding toilet paper. But we did buy extra batteries, and we expected that when the clock struck midnight in the year 2000, that everything was going to fall apart. And yet we woke up the next morning, and everything was just fine. And when the news feels too heavy or too constant, there are ways for us to be able to overcome that and make sure that we're just not overreacting to what the news is putting in front of us. Because it's important for us to remember that the reason for a lot of news to exist today is for us to increase our level of worry, to try to find a way to monetize the kinds of news stories that are put out on a regular basis. And it makes us worry more than what we really need to. If we feel overwhelmed by the news of the day, it doesn't mean that we are overwhelmed or that we're out of control. For most of us, it means that we care and we really want something good to happen for the people who are around us. We human beings are wired to notice danger. It's part of the survival technique. It's part of what allows us to be able to know that there's something going on that we should be concerned about. And so when the news spikes and tells us that something should be alerting us, we pay special attention to that, but it can wear you out. But just because there's something that might seem dangerous doesn't mean that that's the whole story of humanity. There's always been courage. There have always been people who have overcome. There have always been good people. And there have always been folks who are focused on the important things to be able to take care of their families and for the people who are really close to them. My other great-grandmother, Edna Jane Witty, she lived in town. She was special. She would let me sit on her little footstool and then stand up and preach to her. She never corrected me. She never said, yes, that's right, or no, that's wrong. She just listened. She gave time, the most precious commodity that she had at that point. She taught me to speak up and to listen for the right words, listen for what generations had to say. And it's part of the reason that I like sitting here in the grandpa chair, because she encouraged me to be able to figure out how to use words to make people feel better and to bring comfort and peace to the folks who are around us, who are looking for a reason to find calm when the rest of the world seems out of control. One thing both of those women taught me was that you don't have to have everything all together. They didn't lecture. They didn't tell me these things. They just showed with their lives how it is that you make a life that's important by focusing on the right things. They also taught me that you don't have to carry the whole world's problems in order to have a meaningful life. The world has always been complicated, but that doesn't mean that it's too difficult to overcome. Ordinary people have always made the world better because of how they lived in their homes, how they took care of their families, how they reached out to their neighbors, how they found the people who needed help, who maybe didn't even know they needed help at that point. You may not be able to control all the noise around you and all of the news around you, but most certainly you can control how you love the people who are around you, how you take care of the people who need your help, and how you make sure that your community is in a safer and better place. Across every generation, people have lived a life based on faith, hope, and love, to steady themselves when the world seemed really uncertain and when the news seemed too much to handle. What we find is that fear changes shape over time, but the generational values of faith, hope, and love always remain constant, regardless of what period of time we're talking about. The world has always had frightening chapters, and I'm not saying that life isn't hard and that you don't have to try to fight to overcome. But really, the world has always been filled with people who were fighting themselves to be able to bring faith, hope, and love to the reality of the people who are around them. With news stories like we see on a regular basis, we don't have to invest ourselves in every drama that's put before us. You don't have to solve everything that you see and hear about. You don't have to carry the whole world, but what you do have to do is just be faithful with the part of the world that's placed in your hands. And so, at the end, that's really what's most important, is realizing that you have the power in your own hands to be able to be calm, to be able to be rational, and to be able to bring peace, hope, and love to the people who are around you. Thanks for joining me. From the Grandpa Chair, I'm John.